Hey everybody, James with My Breeder Supply. A follow up the last part of the Q&A session. The other session got too long, so I thought I'd break it up. Okay, so here we go. So somebody said their dog was bred, they call this a blue dog, but they've got the wrong, well, let's put this down. They bred these two dogs together. Well, they're talking about that as blue because BB stands blue, but that's not, that's actually brown. So we're going to get the terminology right. We've got a paper towel here. So we're going to get this right. That would be a chocolate dog. So really what they mean is that they bred this here. A DD dog to another blue DD dog. What do you get? Well, Punnett Square says if you take a DD dog to a DD dog, all the puppies will be blue. They'll all be double dilution. And then they start talking about how strong is the gene and will it show up in the offspring. There is nothing about strength in genes. Genes are either there or they're not there. They're not a little bit, you don't get like an 80% of a blue or 100% of the blue. It's either there or it's not there. It's either on or it's off. You either get blue dogs or you don't. So this situation here, all the offspring is going to be blue. Now you can get different variations of blue, and there are other genes, intensity genes, that are present that affect whether or not it's a blue fawn, or a deep blue color, or a silver color, or something in between. So there are other modifiers to this. An example would be a dog that is blue, that is also chocolate, which is a lilac dog. And this tends to be a more of a lighter, purpley or grayer color. So there's an example of modifying blue with another gene. But genes don't have strength. They are either present or they're not. Every dog has two genes for every trait we're talking about, and they give one of those two genes out to their offspring. So what I'm talking about here is a dog, for instance, doesn't have blue and has one copy of blue, and it has to give one or the other out. It can't give a mixture of the two out. It can't give 10% of this and 90% of this. It either gives out the no blue gene or it gives out the blue gene. So I just want to get across this idea of strength of genes. That's not the right terminology. There is no strength of genes. They're either turned on or they are not. Time between breedings. How frequently should you time between... So the first thing is, the time between breedings is typically 6 months. A dog comes into heat typically every 6 months. So the other part of this question is, should you breed a dog back to back? And I have another whole video, and it's called, is it unethical to breed dogs back to back? And I'm going to let you refer to that because there's a quite in-depth discussion about why you should or shouldn't be breeding. So there's no simple answer to this. My dog was AI'd, and after 2 weeks you're still bleeding. Is this normal? Yeah, absolutely. This can absolutely happen. Some dogs, the entire heat can go on for 3 or 4 weeks and it looks like a murder scene. There's blood everywhere. Some dogs, you can't hardly see any blood at all and you wonder what the heck's going on. So it can be between the two. Most dogs, the majority of dogs, will show signs of heat at day 0. And then as their progesterone level increases, day 5, it starts to go up rapidly. And about day 9 is ovulation, and that's about the point that most dogs, their blood color is much, much pinker or even vanilla in color. Now the progesterone rises even more, and you breed typically between day 11 and 13. And in lots of dogs in this area here, which is a progesterone level of 15 to 25, in this area here, typically these dogs have gone pink or almost vanilla in color. But not always. So this is the problem. Blood discharge is useful in identifying where you are in this whole process, but it's not the be-all and end-all of it. And if you just go by simply colour, you'll get it right 80% of the time, but you certainly will not get it right all the time. So blood colour by itself is useful, but it's certainly not the total answer as to what the heck's going on inside your dog. I tested my dog, who was at a 4.5 yesterday. So we'll just call this day 1. Which is at a 4.5 progesterone level. When should I breed? Right, so day 2 typically goes up from a level of 1 to 5, it typically goes up 1 point a day. So the next day we're just going to shave the numbers off and we'll say day 5. This is, second day, her progesterone level is 5. This is ovulation. This is the marker for ovulation. The next day, day 3, after we got this level here, she should have gone to an 8. And the day after that, it should be a 15, and that's what we want an AI, for a vaginal AI. So what would I do in a situation like this? I would breed this dog twice. I'd breed this dog here, and then I would wait until day 5, and I'd breed this dog here. That's what I would do. I breed this dog twice, and the reason that is gives you a better window of opportunity. If this dog stalls out and you don't know it, you've still got it covered. So that's what I would do in that situation. Somebody says cutting off their dew claws, that's just completely barbaric. That'd be the equivalent of me cutting your thumbs off. Nope, not right at all. Of course, I know I'm going to go get some ire of people when I start talking about this, because some people think you shouldn't be removing dew claws, and I respect them, that's fine, not a problem. If you don't want to remove your dew claws, don't. But to think that if you take a dog that's a year old and you whack its dew claw off, just without anesthesia, without any anesthesia, it'll probably bite the shit out of you, and it would be completely its right mind to do so. But when you do this to a puppy that's like 3 days old, I promise you, there is little howling, screaming, or anything. No blood, no nothing. The bones have not fully calcified. And I've got a whole video on how to do this, but I've done this hundreds of times, and I've never had a problem with it. And I've never had a puppy. The only thing that I've ever seen a puppy do is a little squeal when you first clamp the claw down, and it's mostly those dogs. They'll squeal the moment you even touch their thumb with something, because they're just not sure what the hell's going on. But you run your finger over, you remove the dew claw, you take the clamp off, and you wouldn't know that anything had ever happened to that puppy. So I promise you, this is not the same as just hacking off your knuckle. So I understand that people don't like the idea about removing dew claws. If you don't like it, then absolutely don't do it. But realize that this is, I would never, ever, ever do anything to any dog ever that I thought was going to cause grief, harm, or pain to a dog. I just wouldn't do that. I mean, I don't even kill insects. I mean, if I see an insect on the ground, I don't go over there and squash it. I think that, all life is, I'm not a nut, don't get me wrong here, but life is precious. And certainly you would not ever do anything to somebody else that you wouldn't do to yourself. That's just a true thing about life. Treat other people the way you want to be treated, and that includes your dogs too. So please, less on the comments about being mean to dogs, because I promise you, it's not in my spirit at all. Getting on my high horse there. I don't like it when people think that I'm being mean to dogs. It's just not what I do. And so, okay. Silent heat. How do I find out if my dog's having a silent heat? Well, so we've got a dog here that you're expecting it to go into its heat, and it hasn't happened. You're waiting, and there's no blood, and it's like, what the hell's going on? Is my dog okay? Probably your dog's okay. Probably the answer is it probably hasn't even gone to heat yet. It's just having a delayed heat. But it could be having a silent heat. So a silent heat is a dog that doesn't discharge any color at all. There's no sign on the floor, on the bedding, that she is in the process of having a period, a heat. What do? Well, the first thing is the very simple thing you can do is go get a Q-tip and stick it up inside a vulva every week and look for some color on it. So some dogs produce very little color, but most of those dogs will show a little bit of color on Q-tip. That is the simple and easiest thing to do. If that doesn't show any color, the only thing that you can do that I'm aware of is, well, you can either do what's called vaginal cytology, where you put the same Q-tip up inside her, you rub it onto a slide, you stain it, you look at it under a microscope. I've got videos on this. You can go buy a $100 microscope. You can buy $15 worth of stain on eBay, and you can actually learn how to do this and cut out the middleman. That could be very expensive to find out. And you just do it once a week, and you look for the difference between cells on the microscope slide that look like fried eggs with a central dot versus cells that look more like squares, and they are what's called cornified. They look like cornflakes. And there's a transition between these two where you are what's called fully cornified at the point that you're going to breed the dog. You could do this every week, do it. You won't miss your dog, and you'll know what's going on. The other thing you can do is a progesterone test. A dog that you have missed, a dog that has been through a silent heat, will have a progesterone level of greater than 20, and it will remain that way for 2 months. So if you do a progesterone test on a dog and it comes back and says your dog's at a 35, that dog has gone through a heat, you unfortunately missed it, and you're going to have to wait for the next time, because that progesterone level, here's a chart, 0 to 6 months. But what happens is the progesterone level goes up, stays up for about 2 months, goes down for about 2 months, and then the whole cycle starts again. So this is the beginning of heat here, this is the beginning of heat here. And you've got to catch that within a few days to get a successful breeding. And if you don't get the outward signs of swelling or blood, you're going to have to do the vaginal cytology. It's really the way to do it. I have, what did I write down here? Oh, somebody's got a, well, they're asking, they've got a fawn puppy and they want to have black and white, they want to have pied puppies. So the question is, how do you get pied puppies? Well, the answer to this is the pied gene comes in 3 ways. It can be 3 different forms of it. NN, the dog has no pied. NS, this is the spotting gene, NS has a copy of pied, doesn't show it, or it is a pied dog. If you've got an NN dog, it can never produce a pied puppy ever. You just can't do it. Because a pied puppy has to have 2 copies of pied, and if it can't get 1 copy from one of the parents, it can never be a pied dog. It could be a pied carrier, but it can never be a pied dog. To get a pied dog, you have to, at the very least, have married together 2 pied carrier dogs. And if you do that, back to the good old Punnett square, you've got a pied carrier dog with a pied carrier dog. You get half the puppies don't show pied. Sorry, a pied carrier dog, I did it wrong. So you get a not pied and a pied carrier. And a pied carrier, and there it is, the pied dog. 1/4 of the puppies are pied. So if you put a non-pied, a pied carrier to a pied carrier, half the puppies are pied. If you put a pied carrier dog, one that doesn't look pied but carries it, to a pied dog, what do you get? Well, you get a pied carrier and a pied carrier, and then you get 2 pied dogs. Half the puppies end up being pied. And of course, if you put a pied dog to a pied dog, what do you get? The answer is that all the dogs are pied. So pied to a pied gets 100% pied every time. Now you can be a little bit confused on this because you can get a dog that pops out that looks completely white. That is an extreme pied. It has a little bit of colour somewhere. It might be on the inside of its ear. It'll look like a completely snow white dog. That is not a snow white dog. That is the extreme pied. And that dog does not want to be bred because it can have problems with deafness or wants to be bred to a totally non-pied dog. What size crate do you use for your heating system? So the one that I get is the 42, this is for a Frenchie, a 42 by 27. There's some variations on it, there's a 42 by 28. I buy this on Amazon, it's about 60 to maybe 70 bucks. The kind that I think are great are Amazon Basics, Midwest Crate, Midwest, it's a W, Midwest Crate, and Paws and Pals. They make really good solid crates. There are less expensive crates that might cost you 50 bucks. They're made of paper clips, they suck. There's such skinny wires in them that a dog can get its head stuck through the wires and you've got a problem. Don't get the cheap one. Go spend the extra $10. Get the heavier duty one. Amazon Basics, Midwest Crate, Paws and Pals. If you have a bigger dog, if this is good for a dog that is less than 30 pounds, so less than 30 pounds, that is a good size. If you've got a bigger dog than that, like the German Shepherds and the Labs, then go get a 48 by 30. 48 by 30. That one works great too. So there you go. So this person bred a blue and tan dog, and they say the dog's got a purpley nose, it's got chocolate nose and purpley lips, but it doesn't have a red eye glow. Is it a chocolate dog? Well, in my experience, all chocolate dogs that I have ever been around, a dog that a dog that basically is BB, always has a red eye glow. I have never ever. Now, this red eye glow may not show up until they're 7, 8, 9 weeks old. I've never seen a dog that's a couple of months old that was chocolate that didn't have a red eye glow. So since your dog does not have a red eye glow, I don't know what's going on here, but I suspect it is not chocolate. My puppy's got a flat chest. I'm going to do a whole video just on this, but just to answer this quickly. My dog has a flat chest. What do I do? The reason your dog has a flat chest is probably one of the fatter puppies in the litter. It's developed that flat chest in the first few weeks of its life. And the reason is it's not getting up on its feet and it's swimming around. So its legs are out, it's never getting up, it's quite content, it's getting tons of milk, it looks like a walrus. And if you look at the puppy, it has a flat chest. The answer to this is you tape the legs up. If you tape the back legs up, it hobbles the dog where it has to get up to move around. It can no longer swim, so it then gets up on these two legs together. And within a few days, typically, the dog is walking. And once it's walking, this chest will fix itself. If you let that go on, you will run into problems. And that dog may not walk properly, and it may have a flat chest for the rest of its life. But if you tape it up, I have never had one yet that did not fix it. Last question here. Right, last question. So this one is, somebody's asking about, they can't get to test their dogs because COVID's going on, so the vets are not as responsive as they normally are, right? So fair enough. And so they want to know whether they should, they're asking whether they should AI early because the sperm's got to swim up the vaginal canal. Got nothing to do with COVID, and it's got everything to do with breeding correctly. So progesterone level of 5 is ovulation. And by the way, if you want to go back a day, it's 4. And if you want to go back a day, it's a 3. And this is what's called, typically, if you test for LH surge, you see it here. We don't do LH surge very often because they tend to be the LH surge is a very sharp peak that has a frequency lasts for about maybe 14 hours. So it's very easy to miss this. You've got to keep on testing like crazy to catch the LH surge. But if you do the LH surge, this is a nice way of doing things. You breed 4 days after an LH surge is when you breed. 5 days if you're doing a surgical after the LH surge. 5 days. That's for an AI and that's for a surgical insemination. So I don't test for LH surge. It's hard to do. So typically what you do is you look for ovulation 2 days later, and then you breed 2 days after that. The day after ovulation will be an 8, and the day after that's a 15, the day after it's like a 25. So we do a vaginal AI on a 15, we do a surgical on a progesterone level of 25. So the answer is, why is there a difference between doing an AI, an artificial insemination vaginally versus doing one surgically? And the simple answer is the sperm now is deposited. We've got, if you look at the anatomy of a dog, this is the vulva here. So we're doing an AI through the vulva, and there's kind of a narrowing part right here. And then there is kind of on this upper wall, there's a little hole. It's called the, I think it's called the, I forget now, I think it's called the ovis, but anyway, let's just draw this figure, because this is kind of interesting. It's kind of interesting, because it gives you an idea about what the hell's going on with your AI and the dog. So I'm just going to blow this up, and we'll just talk about this for a second, since it's the last question of this thing. All right, so I have to excuse my not very good drawing here, but we'll get the point across. So this is the dog. This is the hind end of the dog, right? Here's the tail, right? Here's the dog, right? And this is, the anus is right here. We're not doing anything with that. And so this is the opening to the vagina. All right, so here's the dog, right? So what does this look like inside? So there is a tunnel, the vaginal canal, and it tends to be a bit ripply. And then it narrows down. It narrows down like this. And then at the top of this, there's a structure, kind of a little ball with a hole at the top of it. And that goes up into the uterine passageway to get to the uterus, two uterine horns. So it's interesting because when you AI a dog, the first obstruction you come across is this rippling of the vaginal wall. So basically you've got a finger in there, you're moving things around, and you advance a rod, And if the dog is open, this little area right here, I'm going to blow this up, this little area right here. So I've blown this area up now, so we've got the structure at the top. There's a little kind of hole thing here, and there's the horns, right? This little area here, here's the vaginal canal, much bigger. It kind of opens up a little bit, and you can get the rod in a lot further, another inch or so. That lets you know that the dog really is open. So it takes a little bit of work sometimes to get that in. You've got to kind of rotate the rod and put gentle pressure on it. Now, if you go to press the plunger and nothing will happen, you can't press the plunger, it's because of one or two reasons. You've either got that rod up against the wall right here, and you're blocking the end of it, or you've got the rod entirely in, and you've blocked it all the way against the end right here. Right here. What do? In both cases, you back it up about 1/4 inch, and then it'll press. But the point here is that when we do a transcervical insemination, then we actually get the catheter all the way up. Now I'm going to draw this again. For those of you who are not interested, shut your video off now. But for those of you who are interested in the dynamics of actually the physical AI process. So what happens is, I'm going to blow this up even more now. So we've got this opening of the vaginal canal, next down to this narrow area. And then we've got this structure on the end of it, with this kind of mound with a hole in it. And when you do a transcervical insemination, you kind of manipulate this whole structure to get it tilted, and then you get your flexible AI rod all the way up into, and this goes, I've got a colour here, right there. So this goes up into an opening that then goes into two tubes that go off to the two uteruses. So what you do is you actually get this rod up in here, and you deposit the semen right into the opening of the piping that goes up to the uterus. You actually put it here. If you do a surgical AI, you actually put a slit you intubate, anesthetize, put the dog under for 5 minutes, put a slit in the stomach, pull this horn out, pull this uterus out, and with a syringe, you physically inject the semen directly into the horns. When you do this or this, the semen doesn't have to swim all the way up the vaginal canal. That takes them about 1/2 a day to accomplish. And because of that, you shave that time off. You've got to do an AI earlier, 2 days after ovulation, versus a surgical you do 3 days after. The reason for this is the sperm no longer has to travel up this tortuous path, it's already there. Hope that makes sense. Okay, that's it. So if you think we're idiots, which of course at times we are, let us know. If you've got some questions that you think would be interesting to be answered, or you just have a question, ask it on the comments section. If you think we're idiots, go ahead, tell us why. Please just don't tell us we're idiots. Explain why we're idiots, and we'll address it, because we can make mistakes, and there's always different points of view about a lot of this stuff. Some of this stuff isn't art, and so we're always interested on comments, positive and negative, but don't just bash us. If you like us, subscribe to us. We would really like that. Look at our products on mybreedersupply.com. We've spent a lot of time and effort building products that we use for ourselves. We know are very useful in the breeding process. Incubators, heated whelping systems, puppy care kits, shipping products for shipping semen. These are all things that we've developed. Many of them are patented by us for our own use over many, 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 many years. But the most important thing is be nice to your dogs and enjoy life. Bye, everybody.